I didn't even realize my life had just been turned into a joke, until the entire ballroom laughed. Not a polite laugh, not the kind people give when they don't want to be rude. No, this was loud, echoing head-thrown back laughter. The kind that sticks to your skin, the kind that tells you everyone in the room agrees with what was just said. And her sister. My sister's fiancé added into the microphone, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. She's just a sad, washed-up single mom trying to keep up. More laughter. I sat there. Table 12, back corner. Right next to the service door where waiters slipped in and out like ghosts. The table they assign when your name technically belongs, but your presence doesn't. I didn't move. I've had years of practice not reacting. But under the table, my 12-year-old son's hand curled into a fist so tight I could feel the tension radiating off him like heat. And in that moment, I knew something was about to break, but not me. Not this time. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 34 years old. And what happened at my sister's wedding? It didn't just destroy a marriage, it exposed everything. But to understand how we got there, you need to go back 6 months. To a phone call I almost didn't answer. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my tiny apartment in Hartford, halfway through designing a rebrand for a local craft brewery. Indie vibe, earthy tones, minimalist typography, the kind of work I was actually proud of. My phone lit up. Emily, my younger sister. We weren't close. Not anymore. Not since, well, a lot of things. I almost let it ring out. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe habit, made me answer. I'm engaged. She screamed before I could even say hello. I blinked. Oh, wow. That's amazing. And I meant it. Despite everything I did. His name was Ryan Caldwell. Real estate developer. Money. Status. The kind of man my mother had been silently praying for since Emily was 16. Mom is obsessed with him, Emily added. Then, after a pause, she says you have to come to the engagement dinner. Not. I want you there. Not. Would mean a lot. Mom says you have to come. That was our family in one sentence. My mother, Linda Bennett, had spent decades perfecting the art of comparison. Emily was the golden one. Beautiful, polished, socially flawless. The one who got invited to country club brunches and charity galas. And me, I was the cautionary tale. Divorced at 26. Living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Raising a kid on freelance income and late nights. The daughter who didn't follow the plan. That night, after my son Mason went to bed, I checked the family group chat. Emily had posted a photo of her ring, huge, oval-cut diamond, probably 3 carats. The kind of ring that announces itself before the woman even speaks. At the bottom of the thread, my mother had commented, "Finally, one of my daughters did something right." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I locked my phone and went back to work. Some things don't need a reply, they just stay with you. I met Ryan 3 days later at my mother's house in Greenwich. Colonial style, white pillars, perfect landscaping, everything curated down to the scent in the air. Some overpriced candle that smelled like cedarwood and control. Ryan walked in like he owned the place. Tailored suit, expensive watch. Smile that hit just the right angle. He shook my hand. "Claire, finally. Heard a lot about you." Something about the way he said it felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced the line. But what stood out wasn't his confidence. It was his eyes. They didn't settle, they moved. Taking inventory. The house. The artwork. The furniture. Calculating. Then he turned to my mom. "Mrs. Bennett, this place is incredible. The detailing alone. Wow." And just like that, she was hooked. Hook, line, and sinker. He asked the right questions, nodded at the right moments, laughed on cue. A performance. A perfect one. When Mason stepped forward and said, "Nice to meet you, sir," Ryan barely glanced at him. Just a quick nod, no handshake, no acknowledgement. Then he turned back to Emily like my son didn't exist. I noticed. Mason noticed too. On the drive home he was quiet. That's how I knew something was off, because my kid, he talks about everything. Coding, video games, random facts about bridges, anything. Silence wasn't normal. "Mom," he said finally, staring out the window. "Why doesn't Grandma ever ask about your work?" I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "She's just busy." She asked Ryan about his job 3 times. I didn't answer. Because what was I supposed to say? That my mother had already decided what my life was worth, and it didn't impress her. Also, Mason added, I don't like him. I glanced over. You don't even know him. He smiles too much. I almost laughed. That's not a crime. No, he said, calm and certain. But it's fake. I didn't know it then. But that moment, that was the first crack. 4 months before the wedding, Emily called again. I want you to be a bridesmaid, she said. And for a second, just a second, something in my chest softened. Maybe this was it. Maybe we were finally fixing things, maybe. The next morning, my mom called. We've decided the bridal party needs a certain look, she said smoothly. You'll be doing a reading instead. A reading. Translation. You don't fit the aesthetic. I didn't argue. What was the point? You can't win an argument with someone who already wrote the conclusion. But something else caught my attention. The venue. Ryan had chosen it himself, an estate outside Litchfield. Massive, elegant, expensive. The kind of place where weddings look like magazine spreads. The deposit alone, $80,000, and Ryan insisted on putting everything in his name. A man takes care of things like this, he'd said. My mother loved that line. A little too much. A week later, I overheard something that made my stomach drop. Emily was on the phone in the hallway. Ryan says a prenup would ruin the trust between us. She said softly. He says if I really loved him, I wouldn't need one. Every alarm in my body went off at once. Control the money. Refuse transparency. Push emotional guilt. I'd seen this before. I tried to talk to her. Just once. We met at a coffee shop in Stamford. Neutral ground. Have you looked into his finances? I asked carefully. A prenup protects both of you. Her expression hardened instantly. You're jealous. The word hit harder than I expected. You couldn't keep your husband, she continued. So now you don't want me to have one. That's not. Emily, I'm just trying to save it. Claire. She stood up and walked out. Just like that. That night, my mother called. If you sabotage this wedding, she said calmly, you are no longer part of this family. No hesitation, no emotion, just terms and conditions. I sat in my apartment afterward, staring at the walls I had built my life inside. Small, simple. But mine. And for the first time I realized something. This wasn't about fixing my family anymore. This was about something else. Something bigger. So I picked up my phone. And called my best friend. Rachel. I said, my voice steady despite everything inside me unraveling. If I needed to find out the truth about someone, how would I do it? There was a pause. Then she said, Claire, what aren't you telling me? And that's when everything started moving, because 2 weeks later, my 12-year-old son would see something on Ryan's phone. That would change everything. The first time I realized my son had been keeping a secret from me. It wasn't because he told me. It was because he went quiet in a way that felt intentional, not confused, not upset, focused. Like he was holding onto something and deciding when, not if, to use it. And that scared me more than anything, because Mason doesn't sit on things. He dissects them. We were at Sunday brunch, 2 months before the wedding. The kind of place my mom loved. White tablecloths, overpriced mimosas, and people pretending they weren't watching each other. Emily sat next to Ryan glowing. Actually glowing. The kind of happiness that makes you question your own instincts. Ryan was in full performance mode. Talking about a big deal he'd just closed in Westport. Throwing around numbers like confetti. Everyone leaned in. My mom practically beamed. I sat across from them, quietly sipping coffee, watching. Always watching. Mason sat beside me, focused on his French toast. At least that's what I thought. Until Ryan's phone lit up on the table. Face up. Buzz. Then again. Buzz. No one else noticed. But Mason did. I saw it in the way his eyes flicked, quick, sharp, precise. He read it. All of it. Then he looked back down at his plate like nothing happened. I didn't think much of it at the time. I should have. 15 minutes later, Ryan excused himself to take a call. My mom leaned toward Emily. I just adore him, she whispered, not quietly enough. Finally, someone with real ambition. Then she glanced at me. And stability? Subtle. Always subtle. I didn't react. I never do anymore. Across the table, Mason cut his food slowly. Deliberately. He wasn't eating, he was thinking. When we got back to the car, I expected him to say something. He didn't. Not then, not that day. Not for 2 weeks. And that silence, it built. 2 weeks later, we were at a tux fitting for the wedding. Emily had insisted Mason be part of the ceremony. Junior usher, she called it. It was one of the only decisions that felt like it came from her, not my mom. The shop smelled like cologne and pressed fabric. Mason stood on the platform while the tailor adjusted his jacket. He looked grown. Too grown. Ryan walked in 20 minutes late with his groomsmen. Loud, confident, owning the room. He spotted Mason in the mirror and smirked. Emily insisted we include him. He said to his best man, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Kid probably needs a male role model." Louder, not loud, but enough. Something inside me snapped. "His name is Mason," I said, stepping forward. My voice steady, even if my hands weren't. "And he's doing just fine." Ryan raised his hands like it was a joke. "Relax, Claire. Just guy talk." I held his gaze. He looked away first. But Mason, he didn't say a word. He just stared at his own reflection, jaw tight, eyes sharp. Memorizing. On the drive home, he finally spoke. "Mom." I glanced over. "Yeah." I saw something on his phone at brunch. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He pulled out his phone. Opened his notes app. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. That's when my heart started pounding. Because my son, he doesn't forget things that matter. He read it out loud. Contact name V, with a heart emoji. My grip tightened on the wheel. What did the messages say? He swallowed. Then read. "Can't wait for this circus to be over." My breath caught. 3 years max, then we're set. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the car. And then, just get through the wedding, babe. Silence. Heavy, crushing silence. I pulled into our parking lot but didn't turn off the engine. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Mason nodded. "I memorized it." "Of course he did. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He hesitated. "Because I wasn't sure if it mattered." That broke me a little. "It matters," I said softly. "It matters a lot." He looked down at his hands. I didn't want to cause trouble. I reached over and took his hand. "You're not causing trouble," I said. "You're telling the truth." But even as I said it, my mind was racing. Because I already knew what would happen if I brought this to Emily. She'd call me jealous. If I told my mom, she'd call me a liar. And if I stayed quiet, Emily would marry a man who had already planned his exit. 3 years max. Like it was a contract. Like she was an investment. That night, I didn't sleep. I just kept replaying those messages. Over and over and over. The next morning, I called Rachel. "I need everything," I said the second she answered. "Full background. Legal, financial, employment. Everything you can find." Her tone shifted instantly. "Claire, what's going on?" "I think my sister is about to marry a liar." There was a pause. Then, "Give me a week." 7 days. That's all it took for everything to start unraveling. But before that week was over, Ryan made a mistake. A big one. The rehearsal dinner. Private room, fancy French restaurant. About 40 people. Close family, inner circle. The kind of room where secrets feel safe. Ryan stood up for a toast. Glass raised. "Smile perfect. To family," he said. "The ones who show up." Then his eyes landed on me. "And the ones who try their best." Polite laughter. My mom clinked her glass. Emily smiled like nothing was wrong. I kept my face neutral. Next to me, Mason cut his steak slowly. Then Ryan stepped outside with his groomsmen. Left his phone on the table. Buzz. 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 3 times in a row, loud enough that people noticed. I was mid-conversation. But Mason, he wasn't. He glanced at me. I didn't notice. No one did. Except him. He reached forward. Just slightly. Tilted the phone. Just enough. And in that moment he didn't just read the messages. He captured them. Photos. Clear. Time-stamped. Proof. Then he set the phone back exactly where it was. Same position. Same angle. Like nothing happened. When Ryan came back, he didn't suspect a thing. He picked up his phone. Kept smiling. Kept performing. But something had changed. Because now we didn't just have words. We had evidence. Cold. Clear. Undeniable. And 3 days later, Rachel called me. "Claire," she said, her voice serious in a way I'd never heard before, "you need to sit down." I was already sitting. "Ryan Caldwell," she continued, "is not who he says he is." My heart started racing. "What did you find?" There was a pause. Then she said something that made my entire world tilt. "He's broke, Claire." And that was just the beginning. He's broke. Claire. I didn't breathe. I just sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in my world. "What do you mean broke?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel didn't soften it. "Not struggling. Not tight on cash. I mean buried. He's carrying over $180,000 in personal debt." My stomach dropped. Student loans, maxed out credit cards, and a private loan at a ridiculous interest rate, and that's just what I could legally access. I shut my eyes. Ryan Caldwell. The man my sister was about to marry. The man my mother practically worshipped. A lie. All of it? I asked. "Keep listening," Rachel said. And something in her tone made my chest tighten even more. "He hasn't worked at Whitmore and Chase in 4 months. I blinked. "That's not possible. He told Emily he's a senior partner there." "He was terminated," Rachel said flatly. "For misrepresentation of client accounts." The words hit like a punch. Misrepresentation. That's corporate speak for lying, she added. Potentially worse. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. "And his company?" I asked. "Caldwell Property Group, Shell LLC, no employees, no revenue. Registered to a mailbox address in Stamford." Silence. Heavy, suffocating. Every memory of Ryan replayed in my head. His confidence, his charm, the way he controlled every conversation about money. It all made sense now. "He's not building a future with your sister," Rachel continued. "He's securing one." I swallowed hard. "You mean, her money?" "Your mother's money," she corrected. Of course. My mom had already poured over $200,000 into the wedding. And Ryan, he'd made sure everything was in his name. Control, leverage, access. My hands started shaking. "If I tell Emily," I said slowly, "she won't believe me." "No," Rachel agreed. "She won't. And my mom will say I made it up." "Probably." I let out a hollow laugh. "So what do I do?" There was a pause. Then Rachel said, "You wait until you don't need them to believe you. Because the truth speaks for itself." I exhaled slowly. "Can you send me everything?" "It's already done," she said. 12 pages. Verified records. My license number is on every page." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Thank you, Claire," she added, softer now. "If you're going to use this, be careful when you do it." I hung up and just sat there. Because now I had 2 things: my son's screenshots and a legal background report. 2 separate truths, pointing at the same man. But I also knew something else. Truth doesn't matter in a family like mine. Unless it's undeniable. The night before the wedding, I stood in my apartment staring at the manila folder in my hands. 12 pages. 12 pages that could destroy everything. Mason walked into the room, already dressed in his suit for the rehearsal dinner. "Is that it?" he asked. I nodded. He slipped his hand into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I still have the screenshots," he said. I looked at him. Really looked at him. 12 years old. But in that moment he felt older than anyone I knew. "We're not going there to cause a scene," I said. "I know," he replied calmly. "But if something happens, we should be ready." That word stuck with me. Ready. I wasn't ready, not for what was coming. The wedding morning arrived too fast. Clear skies, perfect weather, of course. Everything about that day was designed to look flawless. I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting a simple navy dress. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would draw attention. I'd learned my place a long time ago. Mason stood behind me, tying his tie. "You nervous?" I asked. He shrugged. "A little." "About what?" He met my eyes in the mirror. "About people lying." That hit deeper than anything else that morning. I picked up the folder, slipped it into my clutch. "Only if necessary," I whispered to myself. Mason patted his pocket. "Same." The venue looked like something out of a movie. Stone estate, rolling lawns. White chairs lined in perfect rows. A string quartet playing soft music as guests arrived. Everything elegant, everything expensive, everything fake. Ryan stood near the entrance, greeting guests like a politician, shaking hands, smiling wide. When he saw me, his expression shifted just slightly. "Claire," he said smoothly. "Glad you made it?" I didn't respond, I just walked past him. Inside, I found our table. Table 12. Of course. Back corner, near the service door. Mason picked up his place card. He smirked slightly. "Table 12, he said. "That's the wish you didn't come table." I huffed out a quiet laugh. Gus were consistent. We sat down. The ceremony began. Emily walked down the aisle looking breathtaking. And for a second, just a second, I doubted everything. What if I was wrong? What if this was real? Ryan delivered his vows perfectly. Not a single stumble, not a single crack. Like he'd practiced them in front of a mirror. Emily's vows, messy, emotional, real. She forgot a line, laughed, started over, and somehow that made it worse, because she meant every word. "I do," she said. "I do," he replied. Applause. Cheers. Rose petals. From the outside it was perfect. But I knew something no one else in that room knew. They weren't legally married yet. The paperwork hadn't been signed. Time to stop it. Or time to stay silent. The reception started. Champagne flowed. Music played. People laughed like nothing was wrong. Then came the speeches. My mom went first. "I always knew one of my daughters would find someone worthy," she said. Emphasis on one. People glanced at me. I kept my eyes on the table. Then Ryan stood up, took the microphone, and smiled. That same perfect practiced smile. "I want to thank everyone who's here today," he said. "Even those who didn't believe in us." His eyes locked onto mine. The room followed. "And who are still trying their best." Louder polite. But building. His best man leaned into the mic. "Yeah, we almost had to assign Claire a +1, but she brought her kid instead." Louder laughter. My fingers pressed into the table. I stayed still. Stayed quiet. Stayed. "Come on," Ryan added, chuckling. "Claire's just doing her best." He paused, timing it perfectly. "She's just a sad single mom trying to figure life out." The room exploded. Louder, real laughter, and I felt it, that familiar heat, rising, burning. But I didn't move, I didn't react, because I'd done this my whole life. Until my mom stood up, champagne glass in hand, smile sharp. "Oh, don't be too hard on her," she said sweetly. Then she looked right at me. "She's like a discounted item with a scratched label. Still on the shelf, but nobody wants it." And just like that, 200 people laughed. At me. At my life. At everything I'd survived. I sat there, frozen, because this wasn't new. This was just the first time it had an audience. But my mother made one mistake. One fatal mistake. She forgot. I wasn't the only one at that table, because in the next second, I felt Mason's chair slide back, and when I turned, he was already standing. "No, Mom." That's what he said. Not loud. Not dramatic, just final. I grabbed his wrist instinctively. "Mason, sit down." But he looked at me in a way I had never seen before. Steady, certain, unmovable. "No." And then he pulled away. My 12-year-old son walked across a ballroom full of 200 people who had just laughed at his mother, like none of them existed, like the only thing that mattered was the truth. Every step he took echoed. Table 12 to table 11. Table 10. Table 8. People started noticing. The laughter died down, replaced by confused murmurs. "What is he doing? Whose kid is that?" My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. "Mason," I whispered, but it didn't reach him. He didn't stop. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight up to the stage, stepped onto the platform, and took the microphone. The sound of the stand shifting echoed through the speakers. Silence. Complete silence. 200 people turned toward him. Ryan froze mid-laugh. My mom's smile tightened. Emily looked confused. And my son. He stood there, shoulders squared, hands steady, eyes locked forward. "I know something about the groom." The room went dead. Not quiet. Dead. Like the air had been sucked out. Ryan let out a short laugh, trying to recover. "Hey buddy, why don't you sit down? This isn't." 3 weeks ago. Mason continued, cutting him off. "I saw messages on your phone." Ryan's smile flickered. "Just for a second. But I saw it. From someone named Victoria." Mason said clearly, saved as a V, with a heart emoji. A ripple moved through the crowd. People shifted in their seats. My mom stood up sharply. Claire, control your child. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Because something in me knew. This wasn't a moment to stop. This was a moment to witness. Ryan stepped forward, voice tightening. He's a kid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Mason didn't even look at him. He kept going. She said, can't wait for this circus to be over. A murmur. Louder this time. And you said, 3 years max, then I'm set. Gasps. Actual gasps. And then she said, just get through the wedding, babe. The room erupted. Not in laughter this time. But in confusion, whispers, disbelief. What is this? Is this real? Emily's face went pale. Ryan? She whispered. He shook his head quickly. This is insane, he's making it up. That's when Mason reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I have the screenshots. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Ryan's face changed. Completely. The charm, gone. Replaced by something raw. Something desperate. You went through my phone. He snapped. That's illegal. A voice from the crowd cut him off. Not as illegal as fraud. Everyone turned. It was my Uncle David, my mom's older brother. A lawyer. Calm. Sharp. Observant. He adjusted his glasses. The content matters more than how it was obtained. Ryan's jaw tightened. For the first time, he looked cornered. That's when I stood up, slowly, deliberately. I walked toward the stage. Every step felt heavier than the last. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew. Once I stepped up there was no going back. I reached Mason. Placed my hand gently on his shoulder. He didn't flinch. Didn't move, just stood there. Strong. I'm sorry, I said quietly into the mic. The room leaned in. But my son is telling the truth. I opened my clutch, pulled out the manila folder, held it up. And I have proof. You could feel the shift. Like the entire room tilted. Ryan Caldwell was terminated from his firm 4 months ago. I continued. For misrepresentation of client accounts. Gasps. Louder now. He doesn't have a company. Caldwell Property Group is a shell. No employees. No revenue. People started whispering. Phones came out. Recording. His business address is a mailbox. Ryan stepped forward. This is defamation. And he's over $180,000 in debt. That did it. The room exploded into noise. Wait. What? Are you serious? Emily staggered back slightly. Ryan, tell me that's not true. He pointed at me, his voice rising. She's lying. She's jealous. She's been trying to ruin this from day one. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. This report was prepared by a licensed attorney. I said calmly. Every record is public. You can verify it yourself. I handed the folder to Emily. Her hands trembled as she took it. She flipped through the pages, slowly. Her face changed with every line. Confusion. Denial. Then something deeper. Something breaking. You told me you closed a $4 million deal last month. She said softly. There's context. You told me your company had 12 employees. Emily. You told me a prenup would ruin our love. Her voice cracked. Not from sadness. From realization. From betrayal. Mason held up his phone. Someone from the front table took it, looked. Then passed it. One by one, like evidence in a courtroom. Oh my God? Someone whispered. They're real. Ryan looked around. Searching. For support. For allies. For anyone. But no one stepped forward. Not his friends. Not his family. Not even my mother. He grabbed Emily's arm. We need to talk. Now. She yanked it away. Don't touch me. The room went silent again. Different this time. Not shock. Judgment. Ryan tried one last time. This is exactly what she wanted. He said, pointing at me. A bitter ex-wife ruining something beautiful. Emily turned to him. Slowly. Deliberately. The marriage certificate hasn't been signed yet. That hit harder than anything else. She looked at the officiant. Don't file it. The man nodded immediately. Then she looked back at Ryan and said 6 words that changed everything. We're done. Right now. The air shifted. Like a storm breaking. Ryan's face went white. Emily, you're being emotional. No, she said. I'm finally being smart. She took off her ring. The massive diamond that had started all of this. Set it on the table. You can have it back. Silence. Heavy final? And the venue contract? She added. Ryan blinked. What about it? You insisted it be in your name. Something clicked in his eyes. Fear. Real fear. That 80,000 deposit, she said. That's your problem now. The room stirred. People whispered again. Ryan looked around, desperate. But this time, no one was laughing. No one was smiling. No one was on his side. And that's when I saw it. The moment everything he built collapsed. Because for the first time, Ryan Caldwell wasn't in control anymore, and he had no idea what to do next. You're all going to regret this. That's what Ryan said. But his voice didn't sound powerful anymore. It sounded thin, like something hollow trying to echo. He stood there in the middle of that ballroom. Perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect mask finally shattered, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked small. Not physically, but internally, like the illusion had collapsed and there was nothing underneath to hold it up. He pointed at me first. Then at Mason. Then vaguely at the entire room. You think this is over, he snapped. You think you've won something here. No one answered. 200 people. Dead silent. Because now, they were seeing him, not the version he sold. The real one. Cornered. Exposed. Desperate. He let out a short bitter laugh. This is a mistake. He muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Then he turned and walked out. No dramatic exit. No final speech. Just the sound of expensive shoes hitting hardwood floors, echoing louder than anything else in that room. Step, step, step. The doors opened. Light spilled in, and then, they closed behind him, and just like that, he was gone. No one followed. Not his best man. Not his friends. Not even the people who had been laughing at his jokes 10 minutes earlier. Because the truth has a way of clearing a room. Without anyone physically leaving, I stood there on that platform, my hand still resting on Mason's shoulder. The folder lay open on the podium. Proof scattered like broken glass. Across the room, Emily was staring at me. Not at the door Ryan had just walked through. Not at the ring sitting on the table. At me, and for the first time in years, I didn't see judgment in her eyes. I saw clarity. But before either of us could move, my mother spoke. Are you happy now? Her voice cut through the room. Sharp. Controlled. Still trying to hold on to authority that had already slipped through her fingers. You ruined your sister's wedding. I turned to face her. Calm, steady. No, I said. I didn't ruin anything. Ryan did. If you hadn't made a scene. I didn't make a scene. Emily's voice. Stronger than I'd ever heard it. She saved me. The room shifted again. My mother blinked. Like she hadn't expected that. Do you understand that? Emily continued. She saved me. My mom's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. But nothing came out. Because for the first time, she didn't have control of the narrative. And what you said about her. Emily added, her voice tightening. In front of everyone. She looked directly at our mother. A scratched label. A discount item. The words hung in the air ugly. Heavy. Real. That's your daughter? Emily said. That's who you said that about? Silence. My mother's composure cracked. Just slightly. But enough. That's who you are. Emily finished quietly. Not her. That hit harder than anything else that day, because my mother. She's spent her entire life controlling perception, image, reputation. And in one moment, her own daughter stripped all of that away. People started shifting uncomfortably. Some looked away. Some whispered. Because now the focus wasn't just on Ryan. It was on her. For the first time, she was the one being seen. She slowly set her champagne glass down. Her hand trembled. Barely. But I saw it. And that's when something inside me changed. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just release. 34 years of trying to be enough. Of trying to prove something. Gone. Because I didn't need her to see me anymore. I already saw myself. Emily stepped away from the head table. Walked toward me. Slowly. Like each step mattered. Like each step meant something. The room parted slightly. Giving her space. Giving us space. She stopped in front of me. And for a second, we just stood there, looking at each other. No performance. No pretending. Just truth. Then, she pulled me into a hug. A real one. Not the polite, half-hearted kind we'd perfected over the years. This one was tight. Shaking. Real. I'm so sorry, she whispered against my shoulder. Her voice broke. I should have listened to you. I closed my eyes. It's okay, I said softly. No, it's not. She pulled back, tears streaking her makeup. The bridal shower, the bridesmaid thing, everything Mom said to you. Her voice cracked again. I just stood there. I let it happen. I shook my head. You weren't ready to see it yet. She looked at me and nodded, because now she understood. She turned to Mason, who had stepped back, unsure if he should be part of this moment. Emily knelt down in front of him, in her wedding dress, in the middle of a ballroom full of people. Thank you, she said, her voice steady now. Mason shifted slightly. I just told the truth. She smiled through her tears. That's harder than you think. Then she reached up and adjusted his tie. A small gesture, but something about it. Something about the way she looked at him. Like he mattered. Like he was seen. It broke something open in me, because for so long I had been the only one seeing him. And now, someone else finally did. Emily stood up, walked back to the table, picked up the ring, looked at it for a moment, then placed it down again. Hey, can come get it, she said quietly. If it's even paid for. A few people let out soft, awkward laughs, but most stayed silent. Because no one knew what to do after something like that. A wedding without a marriage. A celebration without a future. The music had stopped. The cake sat untouched. The flowers still perfect, but the illusion? Gone. Completely gone. Guests started slowly leaving. Some whispered apologies as they passed me. Others avoided eye contact. The staff stood frozen, unsure whether to continue serving champagne or start clearing tables. The whole room felt suspended, like time didn't know what to do next. And in the middle of it all, my mother sat down. For the first time that entire day. No speech, no control, no performance, just silence. And that was new. That was something I had never seen before. But the real shift, it hadn't even fully happened yet. Because 2 days later, everything we thought we knew about Ryan got even worse. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just a wedding that fell apart. This was a pattern, and we weren't the first people he'd done this to. I need you to come down here. Now. Emily's voice was different. Not shaky. Not emotional. Controlled. Too controlled. The kind of calm that only shows up when someone has already cried, already broken, and is now operating on something colder. I checked the time. 8:12 am 2 days after the wedding. I'll be there in an hour, I said, already grabbing my keys. Make it sooner, she replied. Then she hung up. No explanation. No context. Just urgency. Mason looked up from the kitchen table where he was halfway through a bowl of cereal. That was Aunt Emily. I nodded. She okay? I hesitated. No, I said honestly. But she will be. He studied me for a second, then pushed his bowl away. I'm coming with you. I almost said no. Instinct. Protection. But then I thought about everything that had happened. Everything he'd already seen. Everything he'd already handled. And I realized something uncomfortable but true. He wasn't a kid standing on the sidelines anymore. He was part of this. Okay, I said. Let's go. The drive to Greenwich felt longer than usual. The sky was gray, heavy, like it knew something was off. Emily was staying at my mom's house. Of course she was. Where else would she go? That house had always been the center of everything. Control. Expectation. Pressure. We pulled into the driveway. 3 cars I didn't recognize were already there. Black sedan. Dark SUV. Another sedan with tinted windows. My stomach tightened. Who's here? Mason asked. I don't know, but I had a feeling. And I didn't like it. We walked up to the front door. Before I could knock, it opened, still in yesterday's clothes. Hair pulled back, face bare. Eyes different, sharp, awake, focused. Come in, she said. No hug. No small talk, just straight to it. The living room was full. 2 men in suits. 1 woman with a laptop open, and my Uncle David, standing near the fireplace, arms crossed, expression unreadable. What's going on? I asked. Emily closed the door behind us, then looked at me. Direct, steady. I found Victoria. The name hit the room like a spark. Mason went still beside me. What do you mean you found her? I asked. Emily nodded toward the woman with the laptop. This is Jenna. She's a private investigator. Of course. Of course it had escalated this far. After the wedding, Emily continued, I couldn't stop thinking about the messages. Her voice didn't shake. Not anymore. So I used Ryan's iPad, the one he left at the house. Smart, calculated. I got into his email, she said, and from there everything opened up. Jenna turned the laptop slightly so we could see. A screen full of names, dates, transactions, photos. This isn't just one woman, Jenna said. My chest tightened. What? There are at least 4, she continued. Possibly more. The room went quiet. Different states, she added. Different timelines. Same pattern. I felt cold. Like something was crawling under my skin. Define pattern, I said. Jenna clicked. A photo appeared. Ryan, standing next to a woman I'd never seen before, arm around her, smiling that same perfect smile. Engagement, Jenna said. Another different woman. Different location. Same pose, same smile. Engagement, she repeated. Click. Another one. This time in front of a beach house. Same story, she said. Wealthy families, significant assets, short engagements. No prenups. My heart started pounding. No, I whispered. Emily nodded slowly. Yes. My uncle David stepped forward. He's running a long con, he said. Targeting financially secure women, embedding himself quickly, and positioning for access to assets post-marriage. Mason looked up at me. What does that mean? I swallowed hard. It means he marries them, and then takes their money. David nodded. Or tries to? Emily crossed her arms. He told all of them the same thing, she said. No prenup means trust. Love over contracts. I let out a slow breath. That wasn't love, I said. That was strategy. Jenna clicked again. Bank records. Partial, but enough. Large transfers, she said. Gifts. Joint accounts opened shortly after marriage. Marriage, I repeated. Emily's jaw tightened. He was married once before. That hit like a shockwave. What? 6 years ago. David confirmed. Annulled after 8 months. Why didn't we find that? I asked. Different last name, he replied. He legally changed it? Of course he did. Of course. I asked. Emily nodded. She's the most recent, she said. Before me. Jenna pulled up a video grainy, taken on a phone, a woman sitting in what looked like a small apartment. Tired, angry, broken. I met Ryan 2 years ago, she said. He told me I was different, that he'd never felt this way before. My chest tightened. He proposed after 4 months, she continued. Said he wanted to build a future together. Emily closed her eyes. Like she'd heard those exact words before. I gave him access to my savings. The woman said. We were planning a wedding. Her voice cracked. Then one day he disappeared. Silence. The video ended. Mason shifted beside me. Did she get her money back? He asked quietly. Jenna shook her head. No. I felt something dark settle in my chest. Anger. Not sharp. Not explosive. Cold. Focused. Emily looked at me. He wasn't just going to leave me, she said. He was going to drain everything first. I nodded. Yeah, I said. He was. My uncle stepped forward again. We've already contacted law enforcement, he said. They're building a case. Emily exhaled slowly. Victoria agreed to testify, she added. And the others? I asked. 2 confirmed, Jenna said. We're tracking the 4th. The room fell quiet again, but this time, it wasn't shock, it was clarity. Everything made sense now. The charm, the control, the pressure, the lies. It wasn't random, it was practiced, refined, perfected, and we had almost, let it happen again. Emily walked over to the window, looked out at the perfectly trimmed lawn, the house that had always represented perfection. And for the first time, she saw it for what it really was. A place where appearances mattered more than truth. I was going to marry him, she said quietly. No one responded. Because there was nothing to say. She turned back to us. Eyes clear. I want to press charges. David nodded immediately. We're already moving in that direction. And I want to make sure he can't do this to anyone else, she added. Jenna gave a small, approving nod. That's how you stop people like him? Mason spoke up. Will he go to jail? The room paused. David looked at him carefully. If we can prove intent and pattern, he said, there's a very good chance. Mason nodded, satisfied. Simple. Clear. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the girl who needed to impress our mother. I saw someone else. Someone stronger. Someone sharper. Someone who had been forced to wake up, and chose not to look away. But even then, even after everything we had uncovered, there was one thing none of us knew yet. One final piece. One last truth that would change everything again. Because later that night, Ryan called me. And what he said? It wasn't an apology. It was a threat. I wouldn't answer that. Mason's voice cut through the quiet of the living room. My phone was vibrating on the coffee table. Ryan. His name lit up the screen like something toxic trying to pull me back in. I stared at it. Ringing, ringing, ringing. I'm going to, I said. Mason crossed his arms. That's a bad idea. Probably, I admitted, but I picked it up anyway. Because some things, you don't avoid, you face them. I hit accept. Claire. His voice. Calm, too calm, like none of this had happened. Like he hadn't just been exposed in front of 200 people. Like he hadn't spent years manipulating women for money. You've got some nerve calling me, I said. A soft chuckle came through the line. You think you know what's going on here? I didn't respond. Because I knew this tone. I'd heard it before. Not from him. From someone else. Years ago. The shift from charm to control. You made a mistake, he continued. A big one. There it was. Not denial. Not defense. A threat. I exposed the truth. I said evenly. No, he replied. You exposed yourself. My grip tightened on the phone. What does that mean? There was a pause, deliberate, calculated. Then, did you really think I didn't look into you too? Cold, sharp, precise. Every instinct in my body went on high alert. I know about your divorce, he said. The custody agreement. The financial strain. The freelance income. Mason looked up at me. I turned away slightly. You think that scares me? I asked. It should. His voice dropped lower. Because all I have to do is make a few calls. Silence. Heavy. Threatening. I can make sure you lose clients. He continued. Make sure your little design business dries up overnight. I didn't react. Not outwardly. But inside, something shifted. You don't have that kind of power anymore, I said. Power isn't about what you have, he replied. It's about what people believe you have. I almost laughed. Because that was the most honest thing he'd ever said. And what exactly do you think people believe now? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. Because he knew. He knew the answer. They'll forget, he said finally. They always do. No, I said. They won't. His tone hardened. You think this is over. I know it is. You have no idea what you've started. That line hung in the air. Dangerous. Open. Ended. Like he wanted me to feel uncertain. Afraid. But I didn't. Not anymore. Let me make something very clear, I said, my voice steady. You don't get to threaten me. Not after what you've done. You think you're untouchable now? He snapped. I think you're desperate. Silence. Then, a shift. Subtle. But real. Because I had hit something. You should have stayed out of it, he said quietly. And let you ruin my sister's life. I replied. Not a chance. A sharp exhale. Frustration. Cracking through. You don't even know the full story, he said. Then tell it, I challenged. Another pause, and for a second, I thought he might. I thought he might actually try to explain, to justify, to spin one last version of the truth. But instead, he said something else, something that changed everything again. You should ask your mother about me. My heart stopped. What? A low chuckle. Yeah, he said. Linda Bennett and we go way back. The room tilted. Mason frowned. What is he talking about? He whispered. I shook my head slightly. Explain, I said into the phone. But Ryan didn't. Of course he didn't. Because people like him, they don't give answers. They plant questions, and let them grow. Good luck, Claire, he said softly. Then, the line went dead. I stared at the phone. Frozen. What did he mean? Mason asked. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. But I had a feeling, and I didn't like it. Not one bit. 20 minutes later, I was in my car. Driving. Fast. Back to my mom's house. Mason sat beside me, quiet, watching. thinking. The same way he had been that day at brunch. When all of this started. When he first saw something no one else did. We pulled into the driveway. The same cars were still there. The same heavy feeling in the air, but this time, it felt different. Darker. I didn't knock, I walked straight in. My mom was in the living room, alone, sitting perfectly still, like she'd been waiting. She looked up at me. And for the first time in my entire life, she didn't look in control. "Do you know Ryan Caldwell?" I asked. No small talk, no build-up, just the question. Her expression didn't change, not immediately. But I saw it, that flicker, that tiny, almost invisible shift. And that was all I needed. "Answer me," I said. She set her glass down slowly, carefully, buying time. "Where did you hear that?" she asked. Ice ran through my veins. "So you do know him?" Silence. She sighed. Not dramatically, not emotionally. Just tired. "Yes," she said. The word hit harder than anything else that day. "How?" I demanded. She hesitated. And in that hesitation I saw it. Guilt. Real. Heavy. Undeniable. "He used to work with one of my clients," she said finally. "What client?" She didn't answer. "Mom." Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, they weren't sharp. They weren't judgmental. They were something else. Something I had never seen before. Regret. I recommended him to Emily. The room went silent. Mason's breath caught beside me. I felt like the ground had disappeared under my feet. "You what?" "I didn't know," she said quickly. "At the time I didn't know. You brought him into our lives," I said. My voice wasn't loud. But it didn't need to be. "You vouched for him." "I thought he was ambitious," she said. "Driven, the kind of man Emily deserved. The kind of man you approved of," I corrected. She flinched, just slightly. "But enough. I made a mistake," she said. I let out a hollow laugh. "A mistake." I stepped closer. "He's been scamming women for years." "I didn't know that." "But you didn't check." I shot back. "You didn't question. You didn't verify." Because she didn't need to. Because if someone looked successful, that was enough. "I trusted my judgment," she said weakly. "That's the problem," I replied. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Mason spoke softly. "You almost let him marry Aunt Emily." My mom looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her expression broke. "I know," she whispered. 3 words. Simple. But devastating. Because they were real. Because for once, she wasn't defending herself. She was facing it. I stepped back. My heart still racing, my mind trying to catch up with everything that had just happened. Ryan wasn't random. He wasn't an accident. He was invited, approved, welcomed, by the one person who had spent her entire life judging everyone else. And now, she had to live with that. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because there was still one final confrontation left. And this time, it wasn't going to be in a ballroom. Or over the phone. It was going to be face to face. Because the next morning, Ryan showed up. Uninvited. And he wasn't alone. The knock didn't sound normal. It wasn't polite. It wasn't hesitant. It was sharp. Heavy. Final. Like whoever stood on the other side of that door already believed they had the right to be there. I opened my eyes slowly. 7:03 a.m., too early for anything good. Mason was already awake. I could tell by the way the apartment felt. Quiet, but alert. "Mom," he called from the living room, his voice low, "someone's here." Another knock. Louder this time. I stepped out of my bedroom, my heart already beating faster. "Stayed behind me," I said automatically. Mason didn't argue. Didn't question. Just followed. I reached the door, paused. Looked through the peephole. And everything inside me went still. Ryan. Of course. But he wasn't alone. 2 men stood behind him. Not friends, not family. Suits. Serious. Official. My stomach tightened. "What is it?" Mason whispered. I stepped back slightly. "Go to your room," I said quietly. "I'm not leaving you. Mason. I'm not leaving." I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for a second I saw it. Not fear. Not panic, trust. He wasn't staying because he didn't understand what was happening. He was staying because he did. And he believed I could handle it. So I nodded once. "Stay behind me." Another knock. "Claire?" Ryan's voice came through the door. "We need to talk." I opened it. Slowly, carefully. He looked different. No perfect suit. No polished smile. Just a wrinkled shirt, tired eyes and something sharp underneath it all. Anger. Control slipping. Desperation rising. "Step outside," he said. "No," I replied. His jaw tightened. "Then we'll talk here." One of the men behind him stepped forward. "Mom," he said, calm and professional. "We're with financial investigations. We need to ask a few questions." I blinked. "What?" Ryan smirked slightly. "There's been a complaint," he said. "Fraud. Unauthorized access. Theft of private information." My heart dropped for half a second. Then it steadied. Because I saw it. The play. The last move. "You reported me?" I asked. "Your son accessed my phone," Ryan said. "Took private data. Distributed it." Mason stepped forward before I could stop him. "I didn't distribute anything," he said clearly. "I showed the truth." "Kid," Ryan started. "Don't," I cut him off. "You don't get to talk to him." The investigator raised a hand slightly. "Let's keep this calm," he said. I took a breath. Then stepped aside. "Come in." Ryan hesitated. Just for a second. Because this wasn't how he expected it to go. But then he walked in anyway. The two men followed. Mason stayed close to me, silent, steady. The investigator pulled out a tablet. "We received a report that private communications were accessed without consent," he said. "We're here to understand what happened." I nodded. "Of course." Ryan crossed his arms, watching, waiting, confident again, because this was his territory: manipulation, control, narrative. But he had one problem. He thought this was still a game. "It's simple," I said. "My son saw messages on his phone, messages that indicated intent to commit fraud." "That's an accusation," Ryan snapped. "It's a fact," I corrected. The investigator looked between us. "Do you have evidence of these messages?" Mason stepped forward. "I took photos," he said. The man nodded. "Can you show me?" Mason handed over his phone. Ryan scoffed. "This is ridiculous." But the investigator didn't respond. He just looked, scrolled, read. His expression didn't change much. But I saw it. The shift. Professional, subtle, real. He handed the phone to the second man, who reviewed it, then nodded once. "Where did you say you obtained these?" the first investigator asked. "Rehearsal dinner," Mason replied. His phone was on the table. Ryan let out a sharp laugh. "So you admit it? Unauthorized access." I stepped forward. "And what about the content?" I asked. "You want to talk about that?" Silence. Because he didn't. Not really. Not in front of them. Not like this. "Actually," I continued, "we should probably bring in the rest." Ryan's smirk faltered. "What rest?" I walked to the kitchen, picked up my bag, pulled out the folder. 12 pages. Verified, documented, real. I handed it to the investigator. "Background report," I said. "Financial records. Employment history. Prior engagement patterns." The room shifted. Again. The investigator flipped through the pages. Slowly. Carefully. Then he looked at Ryan. "Sir," he said, his tone changing slightly. "We're going to need you to step outside with us." Ryan blinked. "What?" This is now a different conversation. For the first time, real panic hit his face. "You're joking," he said. This is nothing. This is a personal matter." The second investigator spoke. It stopped being personal when there was a pattern. Silence. Heavy. Final. Ryan looked at me, not angry anymore. Not confident. Just exposed. "This isn't over," he said quietly. I met his gaze. "It is for me." The investigators escorted him to the door. He didn't fight. Didn't argue. Because somewhere deep down, he knew. The game was over. The door closed behind them. And just like that, he was gone. For real this time. No comeback, no control, no audience, just consequences. The apartment went quiet. Mason let out a slow breath. As it done, I looked at him, then at the door, then back at him. "Yeah," I said softly. "It's done." But that wasn't the end. Not really. Because endings, they're not always loud. Sometimes, they're quiet. A few weeks later, Emily moved out of our mom's house. Got her own place. Small, simple. But hers. We started having coffee together. No tension, no competition. Just conversation. Real conversation. "My mom," she called. A lot. At first I didn't answer. Then one day I did. We didn't fix everything. Not even close. But for the first time, she listened. Didn't interrupt. didn't compare, just listened. And that was new. Mason went back to school, back to coding, back to being a kid, but something had changed in him. Something stronger, something sharper. And me, I kept working, kept building, kept choosing a life that didn't need anyone's approval. Because that's the thing about being broken in public. You either let it define you, or you decide it was never yours to carry in the first place. The day everything fell apart, I thought I lost something. Family, respect, stability. But I didn't. I lost an illusion. And what I got back was something real. A sister who finally saw me. A son who stood beside me. And a voice I didn't have to hide anymore. Because sometimes, the worst day of your life is the one that finally shows you were never the problem.